Welcome to Anatomy of a Song. Today we are putting Hozier's From Eden under the microscope. On the surface, the track sounds like a breezy, romantic, blues-infused folk song, but underneath that warm melody lies a dark, literal subversion of biblical proportions. Let's look at the blueprint.
Hozier's From Eden presents itself as a soulful blues ballad. Beneath that warm acoustic surface, the track moves to a slithering, unsteady 5/4 tempo. This structural choice introduces the tongue framework. In music, the surface architecture, the instrumentation, the melody, the tempo, can operate as an auditory trap, designed to make an uncomfortable narrative feel entirely safe. This diagram shows the intro's waveform. Gospel harmonies and bright flamenco guitars act as an engineered smokescreen. They mask that mapping the rhythm locks you into a lopsided 1-2-3-1-2 cadence. That uneven pulse anchors a narrative of psychological coercion buried beneath romantic vulnerability. The upbeat instrumentation serves a specific purpose. It is the primary tool of the narrator's deception. The artist openly operates from a dark, mythological persona here, acknowledging that the track is written from the perspective of the serpent of Eden. The lyrics map directly to the devil's internal monologue as depicted in John Milton's 17th century epic poem, Paradise Lost. Invoking this classic literature frames the narrator's specific perspective as a grand, fated cosmic drama. To see exactly how this predatory framework is built, we have to perform a microscopic, line-by-line autopsy of the text. The narrator weaponizes romantic poetry to disguise his own violent entitlement and strip the subject of her autonomy. The opening stanza establishes a clear rhetorical strategy, pairing praise with a cutting judgment. He tells the subject there is something magic about her, but only after declaring her tragic. He then asks, "Don't you agree?" This is a psychological tactic designed to define her reality and establish narrative dominance before she can formulate a response. In the second stanza, the narrator zeroes in on her vulnerability, specifically isolating the word lonesome. He pairs this with wholesome. He is identifying the exact innocence he intends to consume. This directly mirrors Satan's strategy in Book 9 of Milton's text, where the fallen angel spies on Eve specifically because she is separated from Adam, isolated and radiant in her innocence. He is systematically identifying, isolating, and luring vulnerable prey. Strip away the poetic rhythm of the third stanza, and the underlying hostility becomes clear. The narrator lists strict demands: no tired sighs, no rolling eyes, no who cares. He is preemptively outlining her boundaries, demanding total submission and constant attention. In the chorus, the narrator aligns himself with the subject. "Honey, you're familiar like my mirror years ago."
Pay attention to where the lyrical pacing drops right here. Hozier isn't just singing about the flawed lover. He is stepping directly into the role of the serpent from the Garden of Eden. He is looking at an innocent human and realizing she reflects the pure angel he used to be before his fall from grace. Let's trace how the production mirrors this corruption.
In the mythological context, the devil recognizes his pre-fall angelic self within her uncorrupted state. It's an act of extreme narcissism. He's infatuated with the reflection of his own lost purity, rather than with her as an autonomous human being. The narrator's affection is entirely self-serving, rooted in his own ego rather than actual empathy for his target. The second half of the chorus details the personification of utopic virtues. Idealism sits in prison, and chivalry fell on its sword, both dying from original sin. Then comes the line, "Innocence died screaming." Here, innocence is never framed as a virtue to be protected. It is an inevitable, violent casualty. This specific line functions as a dark double entendre, where the theological imagery of the fall overlaps with the physical, violent loss of purity. The narrator leverages the weight of this theological tragedy to manipulate the listener into accepting his dark worldview. The weight of original sin serves to mask and justify his own predatory intent. The mechanics of the charming stalker solidify at the end of the chorus. I slithered here from Eden just to sit, and later, hide, outside your door. He self-mythologizes as the cosmic serpent while minimizing his physical threat. A literal boundary violation is reframed as faded admiration. The third verse introduces a jarring tonal shift, moving from vibrant bucolic imagery into a blunt, violent fantasy. The narrator proposes a picnic, but reveals he is bringing a rope in hand for your other man to hang from a tree.
This brings us to the ultimate structural twist. The narrator's obsession moves from protective to predatory. The biblical metaphor turns cold, showing how easily pure infatuation can degrade into dangerous entitlement. Watch how the visual arrangement isolates this shift.
He intends to murder her partner, the Adam in this scenario, in order to possess her. The upbeat, bouncy AA rhyme scheme of the verse continues without interruption, normalizing this homicidal ideation within the rhythm of the track. The surface layer's sinister architecture successfully hides a narrator fully willing to commit murder for absolute possession. The song's surface architecture is a masterclass in psychological masking. By invoking the grand biblical symbols of Eden and the serpent, a mundane narrative of toxic entitlement is elevated into high art. The danger of this framing lies in how it recasts the victim's resistance as attraction, turning a clear no into a coercive not yet. By centering his own cosmic narrative, the narrator minimizes the target's humanity and congratulates himself for pursuing what she has already refused. Ultimately, the tongue framework functions as intended. The upbeat music and poetic flair hide the predator in plain sight. The warm vocals and swaying rhythm provide the necessary friction to distract from the narrator's ultimate goal. The narrator uses the aesthetic of romance to justify his role as the architect of her ruin. The brilliance of the song lies in its ability to make the audience unknowingly sing along with the devil. This image of the artist, bathed in stage lights, reinforces the idea of a romantic ballad rooted in bluesy longing. Beneath the acoustic surface, the track functions as a sterile blueprint for a psychological siege. The narrative engine relies on transactional human dependency and systematic coercion. This flowchart outlines the four-step methodology of the invasion: identify a structural fracture, neutralize psychological armor, erase autonomy, and execute social tethers. Operating mechanically, this progression creates a linear path designed to isolate a target and establish a permanent perimeter. Understanding the mechanics of the track requires treating the lyrics as forensic evidence of manufactured isolation, rather than traditional romantic expression. The opening lyric, "Babe, there's something tragic about you," serves as a diagnostic probe. In this specific context, tragedy is defined as a structural fracture, a psychological entry point for the narrator. The narrator immediately follows this with a semantic shift, "something so magic about you." The narrator glamorizes the target's perceived damage. By rebranding a vulnerability as magic, he transforms a flaw into a desirable commodity. This is followed by the question, "Don't you agree?" a test for mechanical compliance. The question forces the subject into an interactive loop, requiring them to actively self-diagnose and align their reality with the narrator's framework. By securing this initial psychological handhold, the narrator begins the process of centering the target's narrative around his own observations. The narrator then verifies the target's environmental isolation with the line, "There's something lonesome about you." Confirming the host is lonesome ensures the predator that the target lacks a protective social group. He identifies the host as wholesome, signaling a source of uncorrupted energy or data that the narrator intends to consume. This leads directly to the song's first active command, "Get closer to me." This diagram shows the shift from passive observation to an active spatial command. The narrator is officially closing the physical distance. Having confirmed the resource is unguarded, the narrator has moved the invasion into its physical phase. The narrator proceeds to dismantle the target's defensive mechanisms, specifying no tired sighs, no rolling eyes, no irony. Apathy, irony, and boredom are highly effective tools used by individuals to resist psychological manipulation. Demanding the removal of these defenses creates a sterile vacuum, stripping the subject of the ability to disengage or express dissent. The narrator attempts to finalize the erasure of the subject's autonomy with the line, "Honey, you're familiar like my mirror years ago." This is a statement of narcissistic projection. The host is no longer treated as an independent entity. The host's value is now reduced to serving as a playback loop for the predator's own lost, uncorrupted architecture. At this specific stage in the blueprint, the host's identity is effectively replaced by the predator's own reflection. The lyrics provide forensic confirmation of environmental collapse. Idealism sits in prison, chivalry fell on its sword. By describing the incarceration of idealism and the termination of chivalry, the narrator demonstrates that external rescue is impossible. The phrase, "innocence died screaming," serves as a brutal quantification of trauma. This specific visual represents the narrator's description of innocence as a state subjected to sudden, violent, kinetic destruction. The narrator uses the follow-up, "Ask me, I should know," to assert experiential dominance and authority over the host's trauma. By claiming authority over this violence, the narrator positions himself as an entity forged in a crucible the host cannot understand. The mechanics of the invasion are established with the verb slithered. Slithered describes the low-friction, undetected movement of an organism bypassing security. In this context, Eden represents an origin point of maximum entropy rather than a sanctuary. The narrator formalizes a physical perimeter with the phrase, "sit outside your door." This is the architecture of a siege. The entity applies constant, invisible pressure at the boundary of the host's sanctuary. The narrator has established a persistent presence at the perimeter without triggering an alarm. Domesticity is weaponized in the line, "To the Strand, a picnic plan for you and me." The picnic serves as a localized anesthetic, constructing a false environment of safety to mask the predatory reality of the interaction. The mechanics of isolation are made explicit in the following line, "A rope in hand for your other man to hang from a tree." This diagram illustrates the necessity of a closed system dependency. The predator must literally execute the host's alternative social tethers to ensure total control. This violent imagery confirms that the narrator's ultimate goal is unobstructed monopolization of the host. With these external lifelines severed, the target's isolation is finalized. A critical semantic shift occurs in the final loop of the song, where the word "sit" is replaced by "hide outside your door." This single word changes the situation from a passive siege into an active ambush. The threat is no longer just at the perimeter. It has integrated into the blind spots of the host's environment. By masking predatory containment as romantic devotion, the narrator leaves the host trapped. This direct gaze underscores the finality of the narrator's observation.
This is Anatomy of From Eden, a love song delivered by a villain. If you want to dive deep into the design, lyrics, and structural secrets of your favorite track every single week, make sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you on the next one.